All right. So I'm going to show you a couple pictures, and this is obviously not the real Leonidas the First. It's a statue of him, and also Albert the First. So just a couple similarities. What similarities are between these two men here? It's okay. Oh yeah, they're okay. Good. So both kings. They both are the first, I guess, right? They're both kings. What else? Hey, what's up? Oh, that's okay. No worries.
Not just leaders, but also military.
Yes. So, believe it or not, Albert I of Belgium in World War I was the last king to march out with his army. So, other than Albert I, since then, we have not had any leaders of a nation go out with their army. So, he was the last one. Leonidas was leading his little brigade against the Persians of the Battle of Thermopylae. You've probably heard of that. And Sparta. And so both of these kings, I would be inclined to follow them, especially if they marched out ahead of me. I would almost think it's a little difficult to follow a king who's like, yeah, you peasants, go ahead and fight to my wars out there. Go ahead and go out and don't mind me over here, eating my grapes and being fanned over here on my throne. But these two kings, they were leading their armies ahead of them. And we're going to talk about the Great Commission today and being a missional community. What does that mean? But I want us to be reassured that what Jesus is calling us to is something that he's already been the forerunner of before. The book of Hebrews says that Jesus was the forerunner. And so what that means is that Jesus has already gone ahead of us and done the work. Jesus is the king who's already pioneered the front lines of this kind of work he's calling us to do. He's not just chilling like, yes, you peasants, go do my bidding and go do this thing that I would never do myself. That's not the heart of Christ. But Jesus, kind of like these kings, he has already marched out ahead and he is already sending us into the battle. So we're going to read Matthew 28, 16 through 20 today. So you want to turn there. Matthew 28, verse 16 through 20. Okay. This passage is known as the Great Commission. So then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you, and surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age." Okay. So Jesus takes his disciples to a mountain, and interestingly, the disciples are on the mountain, and it probably reminds them of other moments in the past in the Bible where God does something really big on a mountain. So Mount Sinai, God's like, I'm going to give you the law. It's kind of a big deal. Jesus reveals who he is at the transfiguration on a mountain. So the fact that the disciples were told, hey, go to a mountain, they're probably like, we're going to get something big. Something big is going to, a mountaintop experience. We're going to have a mountaintop experience with Jesus. So big, sad, there are only 11 disciples because Judas has hung himself. So they're missing one. But they have the 11 disciples that have trusted in Jesus. They all scattered, but now they're back at it and they're ready to follow the Lord. So they go back to Galilee. Interestingly, because before they were in Jerusalem. So Jesus is like, hey, go back up north to Galilee, which is really far. But Jesus had some reason for that. So Jesus told them to go to the mountain. Now, it said, when they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted. So you might be wondering what's going on here. What are they doubting? How are they worshiping him? The word worship just merely means to bow down. So they were bow down, prostrate, their knees are on the floor or on the ground, and they're praying or singing or I don't know, whatever they're doing to worship him. And then it says that some doubted. Now, it seems a little bit more likely instead that they were hesitant because they obviously have an encounter with Jesus post-resurrection. They believe in him. But the word doubt here actually seems a little bit more like hesitation. They really didn't know how to approach or interact with the risen Christ. It's like, oh, like we know you're literally God. Like you've proved it. So how do I high five you? Do I, it's kind of awkward. It's like the awkwardness that some are hesitant in how to interact with him. So Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. All authority in heaven. So you think about, what does that mean? Like some police officers, they, some of them have a power trip if they have a badge, right? But there is kind of an authority that comes with having a badge or something like that. Jesus is like, I have authority over everything. So turn to Colossians 1, and we'll take a look at what that looks like. Colossians 1:15. Okay. Wait. So this describes the authority that Jesus has. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. That's pretty heavy when you think about how supreme Jesus is. So in him, in Jesus, all things were created. So like everything that exists needed Jesus to exist. It says he's before all things. And verse 17, in him all things hold together. So Jesus is literally holding the universe intact, keeping all the atoms in place and the molecules intact. And so Jesus is like, I have authority over everything, the entire universe. All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth, that's a lot of authority. That's a big badge right there, right? Okay, so Jesus says, in light of this authority that I have authority over everything. In light of this authority, I should have just, I forgot that slide was there. In light of the authority, Jesus says this, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit. So the Great Commission, or the command, the order for us to go make disciples or to make followers of Jesus, is based on the authority of Jesus. It's based on Jesus already going ahead of us. It's based on his rule and reign, his accomplished victory on the cross. In light of all these things, that is the basis of him sending us out. Because typically, if you're going to be sent out into war, you want to know what the likelihood of success is and whether this is a viable mission. And Jesus says, hey, I have all authority in heaven and on earth. You're good. Like, I got this. And in light of that authority that I have, I want you to go and make disciples. Now, the main verb is actually make disciples. It renders something like, therefore, as you're going, make disciples of all nations. Some people make a little bit too big of a deal of it. The way it's translated is probably the most accurate. Go and make disciples. But the point is, Jesus' command is very simple for us to do on this earth. Make disciples. That's it. He wants us to make disciples. Now, he doesn't say, go make converts. He doesn't just stop there. I think sometimes people can simplify it too much and just we just get a bunch of people to pray the prayer to accept Jesus into their heart, and do that as many times as possible. And that's what Jesus wants, right? But unfortunately, it's kind of funny, but it's also really sad. But in a European country that there were a lot of missionary activity at, it might have been Romania or something like that. But the reported amount of converts to the Christian faith was actually 4 times the amount of the actual population of Romania. So in other words, they're like, oh my gosh, there's so many, converted Christians now in this country, but that number was astronomically more than the people actually there, right? So in other words, people are just repeatedly, praying the prayer or repeatedly getting baptized. I don't know, whatever, right? But it's that's not what Jesus is calling us to. He wants us to make holistic disciples of Christ that follow him, that didn't just pray the prayer or get baptized that one time, but people that are genuinely committed to him and live their lives for him and are growing in spiritual maturity. Okay, so Jesus says, go, make disciples of all nations, and then baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So in other words, this baptism is a the baptism is that's so funny. Baptizing them, when we're baptized in the name of, is showing allegiance to. So in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, what this is saying is that we are, as an outward display of one's faith. Someone is getting baptized. They're saying, hey, I belong to God now. To do that in the name of shows that they are on Team God. Then that they've signed away their life, if you will. They signed away their eternity to Jesus. And if anyone ever asks you or tells you that there's no such thing as a Trinity or the Bible doesn't say it, here's the clearest verse that indicates something Trinitarian in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Just as a side note. But Jesus is saying, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and additionally, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded. Right? So it's twofold. One is that they are baptized in the name of, that they become Christians, and also that they walk in obedience, that they know the teachings of the Bible, that they walk in accord with that they live the Bible out, not in hypocrisy, but they genuinely live it out, right? And teaching them to obey everything I've commanded. So everything, that's a lot of stuff, right? Everything. And Jesus' assurance is that he is with us always, even to the end of eternity, is another way to render that. So in this command, it sounds really scary because he's like, go to all these nations, not just here in Israel, not just Samaria, but like to the ends of the world. And my basis of this exhortation is based on the fact that all authority has been given to me, and also that I'm going to be with you, even to the end of the age. So obviously it's really scary. Back in the day, when they were having the modern missionary movement, they would send out missionaries with all their stuff in a coffin. And the reason why is because the assumption was that they were going to be killed in whatever country that they were going to. And so it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing to be sent out and to be making disciples of all nations, especially when Jesus has already said that the world will hate us, and mostly just the message that it convicts of the world of sin and judgment, right? Now, when it comes to the Great Commission, I know sometimes it can be guilt-inducing, or I don't know, name it. Like it can be used in all kinds of ways. I've seen it also in churches sometimes too, where it becomes like a way of indicating success, and it no longer becomes about like glorifying God. It's like look how successful our church is. Like I think I heard of a church that had like a ticker on a screen or something, and it would just be like counting all the converts that they've been racking in or whatever, right? And I was like, I mean, I understand like the desire to celebrate, and that makes sense. But when it's just about success and numbers, I think we're missing the point of the Great Commission. The Great Commission is really doing what Jesus has called us to, and it doesn't have to be so scary or so guilt-inducing. I will say these are things that I have personally wrestled with for my own objections as to why I don't want to make disciples. So one thing you might say is, I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm in school, work, or things like that, right? So that might be one thing, is like I just don't have the time. Interestingly enough, when Jesus gives this exhortation to make disciples, he doesn't say with certain qualifications, right? He's not like, go make disciples of all nations if you have the time, or go make disciples of all nations only if you have the gift of evangelism, or things like that, right? Jesus says just go. Like every disciple of mine is a disciple maker, right? But he says, just go make disciples. And one of the things that I've actually encountered too, while being a pastor, there's like a young adults group I was trying to disciple, and one of the people said, it's just such a sacrifice to make disciples. It takes too much time. And I was like, I think that's part of it, though. I think that's like comes with the territory, right? I mean, even in my life personally, I don't necessarily find myself evangelistically gifted per se. And sometimes I get discouraged with the results or numbers or limited stories that I have. But just because most of us are not evangelistically gifted doesn't mean that we're exempt from making disciples. Another one is, I don't know enough. Sometimes you watch like some evangelists on YouTube, and you're like, oh man, that guy really knows a lot. I wish I knew a lot like that. But I think for me, it's been more of a focus of like, okay, am I relying on my own knowledge to try to argue this person into the kingdom, or maybe I can rely on the Holy Spirit giving me specific words I need in that moment, and I can trust him in that, right? So I think that's a little bit more freeing. Soteriology, like doctrine of salvation, God will save them, it's not up to me, which is true. Like, it is up to God to save people. God saves people. None of us can make someone born again, right? That's the work of the Holy Spirit. But just because it is doesn't mean we're exempt from doing anything about it, right? So sometimes they call it, some Calvinists, the frozen chosen. So they'll be like, well, God's going to save whoever anyway, so why do I need to evangelize, right? Ironically, John Calvin was very evangelistic, so kind of funny how some followers are not as much. Eschatology, so he's coming back soon, but I don't feel necessarily that urgency, because in my mind, or in our minds, we're like, Jesus is coming back soon, but sometimes it's like, well, whatever, like, it is what it is, But yeah, I do think when we have a sense of urgency, like, wow, yeah, Jesus could literally come back at any time. I think it does, in a sense, light a fire under us, and yeah, compels us to, yeah, be a little bit more urgent. I wrote this just as a joke, like I'm in a coma, which is, I think, a valid objection. Like, yeah, I think if you're in a coma, yeah. No, but yeah, I mean, there are definitely some situations I think that, yeah, I think can be an exception. But my point is that there are probably very limited ones, yeah. And another one is I blew at sharing my faith before. I remember the first time I tried to share Christ with someone. I didn't know really how to do it, but I just did like the Ray Comfort model from Living Waters a long time ago. And so I went through the, like, have you ever lusted? Have you ever said God's name in vain? And all these things. And then as I'm going like halfway through the thing, the guy I'm talking to, Drew, he's like, "What are you doing?" And I just felt like really embarrassed, like just trying to share my faith. And he was like really confused as to like what I was trying to communicate to him, So anyway, yeah, I think it made me not want to try to make disciples because I was kind of embarrassed that I tried and it went really poorly. But I just encourage you, to make disciples and to not overthink it. When I think about the encouragement that I could offer any of us for making disciples, it's really not up to us. It's more about a willingness to do it. So I'm going to just share a little bit about the Notre Dame quarterback this year. So Riley Leonard, he ended up, they had a bad loss earlier this year to Northern Illinois University. Is like really embarrassing. Once they lost, I was like, okay, well this football year is over. Like I'm not planning on watching anything more. Anyway, he actually asked a police officer for an escort home because he was so embarrassed about the loss. And this is a little bit more about the story. So he's like, dude, yeah, he's talking to the police officer. Is there any chance you could just drive me to my apartment? That's how embarrassed I was in the moment. I didn't want to show my face outside the building. He was nice enough to say yes. When I got home, I just remember my heart racing so fast. I tried to go to sleep, but there was no chance. So instead, I stayed up for hours playing the game over in my head. I was like, please just let me go to sleep, then wake up and have this be a nightmare. But morning came, and it was still real, right? So on Sunday, I met with Coach Freeman in his office. I told him how terrible I felt and how the loss was on me. The cool thing about Coach is that you can tell he believes his job isn't only to make the program better, but also make us better people. And when he talks to you, you don't feel like he's talking down as an authority figure or anything. It's almost a teammate relationship, which, to be honest, I don't think a lot of coaches could pull off. But that's how Coach Freeman earns your respect. He makes you feel like you're not playing for him, you're playing with him. So anyway, I walk into Coach's office on that Sunday after NIU, and I'm, telling him how bad I feel, how sorry I am and all that. And he just laughs. Someone can laugh during a low moment, but it's not in a bad way. It's this confident way, almost like they know, the future. That was Coach Freeman. He was just like, Riley, I'm telling you, one day you're going to be thankful for this. In my head, I'm thinking, bro, there's zero chance I'm ever going to be thankful for this. But even though I didn't believe him, when he said the way he said it, it was still so comforting to me. He was just so calm and assured. And when I think about us and our performance with regards to making disciples, it's so easy to be discouraged. It's so easy to, just think you're less of a Christian because of your performance or results, or maybe you just have certain family members or friends and they're not becoming Christians and you feel like you're doing something wrong, you're taking it personally, I just want to encourage you that Jesus is with you in this, and he is laboring with you, for success, namely the success of these people coming to Christ, right? And it's easy to be discouraged. It's easy to, especially if you I don't know, you feel like you botch a conversation or you didn't do the right thing in the moment or, whatever. It's so easy to feel like the whole season's ruined. Like, okay, well, forget this. Like, I'm never going to share my faith again or, whatever you want to feel like. But I just want to take the pressure off of you. Think about it. Like, God cares about people's eternity. Is he going to blame you if you ruin someone's eternal existence? Like, if you think about it, like if it was all up to you, like I don't think God's up there and saying, man, if it wasn't for him, man, he would have gone to heaven. But I had this disciple and they blew it, and now the person they're trying to minister to, they're in hell because of this botched conversation. It's like it's not like that. The conversation or the reality is more like this: that God's like, I'm giving my children an opportunity to do something they'll never do after this life. It's like for this little period in eternity, we get to do and participate in something really awesome, which is seeing people come to faith. Because in heaven, we're not going to do this anymore. There's no more, like all the people are already disciples in heaven. This is the only time in eternity when we can partner with God in this. And it should be fun. It should be exhilarating. We can take the pressure off of ourselves. We don't have to, we don't have to beat ourselves up. But I just want to reassure you of that. But I do want to exhort us though as well. Just that God cares much more about your willingness than your performance to make disciples. Right? God can do a lot with a willing heart. This is Isaiah 6:8. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I. Send me." That's all we need is a heart posture that says, "Here I am, Lord. Send me." And with that, Romans 10, I'm going to close with this. How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe on whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. So God could, if he wanted to, do all this saving himself. He could speak in a loud, audible voice to the entire world on blast, and he could do all kinds of miraculous stuff. But he entrusts us with the responsibility of making disciples. And it's a joy and a great responsibility and pleasure. But it is something to steward. It is something to be mindful of. And just recalling, like, when it comes to faith, people need to hear it. They need to hear about Jesus. They need to know about the Lord and what God is offering them. And God is sending us to them. So I just encourage you, think about and ask God, like, what are the contexts, the situations, the people that you want me to interact with so that they might come to know Jesus?